Shalom everyone and welcome to Busisiwe, which is Baruch in Hebrew. My name is Abigail. We're continuing on the series entitled What is in the Name? And today we'll be looking at the importance of knowing the Creator's name. Why is it so important? And we're going to see the importance of knowing His name is that He is revealed in His name. His name reveals who He is, His nature, His character, His reputation, His authority, who He is. His name was inscribed on ancient stones as well as on scrolls which were later discovered. Now, when we look at the Strong's Concordance H3068, it provides us with the name of the Creator who is or which is YaHUaH. And again, while we're still in Strong's Concordance H1961, it then provides the meaning of His name, which is YaHUaH. And H1961, it tells us that His name means self-existent one, or the eternal one. And in Strong 1961, we also find the meaning of I am. You remember when He revealed Himself to Masha, otherwise known as Moses, as written in the book of Shamut or Exodus chapter 3, from verse 13 to 15, when He said that when YaHWeH was sending Masha to the children of Yasharal, Masha said, "Who must I say is sending me? What is His name?" When you say that she is the Allah of your fathers, or the Most High of your fathers, of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob, they're gonna ask me what is His name, and what must I say? What is His name? And that's when Yah revealed His name there to Masha. Not that it was not known before, and we're gonna see that it was not that it was not known. It was not the first time that He revealed it to Masha, even as it's not the first time that He's revealing to us, the generation of our time. But when He spoke to him, He said, He obviously spoke to Masha in Hebrew, and we went through in the previous teachings with that evidence that He spoke to him in Hebrew when He said Ahaya Asha Ahaya, which is translated as I am that I am. So now when we look at then Strong's H1961, we then see the meaning of Ahaya, or the meaning of I am. And when you look at H1961 in conjunction or together with H1933, so H1961 and H1933, it then explains Ahaya as, or rather Yah, as to breathe, to exist, that is, to be or to become, or something to come to pass. So, that's the explanation of the words that you get, and that's why we pick up this this character, or what defines Him as the one who is, and one who will be, and the one who was, and the one who exists, the eternal one, the self-existing one, is also revealed in Revelation chapter 1 verse 8, where He says, "I am the ALaPH and the Tau." The scriptures which have been translated, they are taken from the Greek perspective, and it's written as the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. So He is the one who was, who is, who will be. And continue to say that, says YaHUaH, who is, who was, and who is to come, the ALSHaDaY, or the Almighty. So we then see that His name is not just about pronunciation. Who He is revealed in His name, and that's why it's important then, therefore, to know His name. And that's why even in our study from the first lesson, we started by looking at the meaning of the name, that the name describes a person, the nature of the person, the character of the person. And if it does that to us, even more so to the one who created us. So his name is not just about the pronunciation or just knowing it. It reveals his authority, it reveals his reputation, it reveals who he is. So knowing his name and what it means enables us to trust him, because we understand the substance of his name, the essence of his name. Then it becomes practical for us to trust him, for he and his name defines who he is. So when we call on his name, when we articulate his name, we are reminded of who he is. The one who is, the one who was, the one who was before everything and who will be. He does not change. He remains the same. So also is his name. And that's why we've been emphasizing the issue that the names are not translated, because once you translate the name, it changes. It changes the meaning, it changes the essence, it changes the context. Hence, names must not be translated. And also, names do not evolve with time. And even YaHUaH, his name does not evolve with time, just like his character, who he is, does not evolve with time. He is not like people that we could say, oh, the generation of these years, they were very strict. The now generations, they are more loose, which happens with mostly you see this pattern with parents, the earthly parents, that with their firstborn children, they become very strict and very hard. And then as soon as it goes to the lastborns and so forth, they're no longer the same as they were in terms of strictness and conduct. But he is not that way. YaHUaH does not change with time, neither does his name change with time. People have this perspective that YaHUaH, as they call it, the Old Testament, he was strict. He was like, if you come into his presence on his hakal or his tabernacle, not being kadesh or set apart, his fire would consume you, you would die. And if you did not do X, Y, Z, he would, a lot of people, the sons of Korah, that the earth opened and swallowed them in one day because of their rebellion against Masha. And Uzzah, I think is Uzzah, the one who was trying to hold the Ark of the Covenant, as it was falling on the chariots as they were holding it, and moving it from the Palestinians to from the Philistines to Yehuda, and Dawood, otherwise known as David, was celebrating, was joyful, and then it was tripping and it almost fell, and Uzzah was trying to hold it, and Yah struck him immediately and he died. And a lot of people, they see this aspect of him, and then they said he has now changed. He's now full of grace, he's now full of mercy, and people can now sin, people can now not honor his word and his presence. That's a deception. That's the lie from the enemy. Otherwise, he would not be who he is if he changes. In fact, the people that he punished for rebellion in the old and in the ancient times, they would come before him and accuse him of not being a just judge, because why would he do certain things to them, and now he's the same, the people are doing the same or maybe worse, and yet he's not judging or punishing them. He does not change, neither is his name changes. So his name remains the same, for his name is who he is. It reflects his character, and it is also not translated. Now, as we now know his name and what it means and what it represents as YaHUaH, one then could then be asking the question, okay, now I understand that his name was removed, as we've gone through that teaching last week, and replaced by Lord and God. Now we want to know his name. And now, which one do we call him as his name? Which one do we use? There's JeHoVaH, there's Yahweh, and most people know JeHoVaH, and some people know Yahweh, and you are saying YaHUaH, which is which? Can you then explain which name are we to use? Which one is the correct word? And I'm going to start by saying that firstly, both JeHoVaH and Yahweh are incorrect. And in as much as they are acknowledging that they cannot call him by his title Lord, and but they're calling him JeHoVaH and Yahweh, those are still incorrect. But then what we're going to be looking at today is how did they become incorrect, or how were they misunderstood, and hence now JeHoVaH and Yahweh. So we're going to see that this happened as a result of translation, yet again, because they had what is called the tetragrammaton, or four-letter word, and they were trying to, the translators of the time, to translate it into English. And then I'll pick up then in today's teaching how then the errors happened. Now, when we look at the four-letter word, which is YaHUaH, so you have Yod or Y, you had Hey, which is H, and then you have U, and then you have Hey again. So it's YaHuH, pronounced as YaHUaH. But what happened is that many years ago, there was misunderstanding in terms of the pronunciation of Ye, or Y into J. And so we see this whole mispronunciation of Y to J in words like Jerusalem. It should be Jerusalem, but it's called Jerusalem. And words like Jordan, which is supposed to be Yardan. Now, this was definitely mispronounced, or rather the name of JeHoVaH came as a result of this, this mispronunciation of the name came as a result of that misunderstanding of starting with, like I said, it's YUH, YH rather, it's YHUH. So, but as they were doing the translation, instead of the first Y, they wrote that as J, hence the name JeHoVaH. But it is an error that it started, they used J instead of the H. And that is because until the year 1524, there was no letter J. The letter J was originally the same as the letter I. So it was literally the letter I. It was later that the letter J then came before, so it came with the Italian author. His name was Gian Giorgio Trissino, an Italian author and a grammarian who lived between 1478 and 1550. So he's the one that changed or added, because the letter I is still there, but he added the letter J, which as you can see is I, then to put in that curve that makes the J, and the I is in the dot that we see on the alphabet I, hence changing the Y into J. And we can be able to see that when we go to the whole in the original version of the King James version, which was the first edition issued in 1611, an example there is that the name Jesus is not there, because, as I said, the letter J was only introduced in 1524. It was not there before. And even the letter Jesus was derived from the Latin word iesos, translated in Greek also as iosos. You can find this in your concordance 2424, Greek concordance 2424. Now, the question is, if then this letter J only came or was only introduced in 1524, the letter J was only seen in the Bible around 1628, which was the 4th edition of the King James Version. Like I said earlier on, the first version of the King James, which was 1611, did not have the letter J. It was I, not J. That was before. They still kept the original letter I, not J, in the original King James Version. As I said, if you go there, 1611, there is no Jesus there. I'm using Jesus also. We will talk about the name Jesus later, but I'm focusing on the teaching around the mispronunciation of the name JeHoVaH. How did it come about? Just like Jesus is not the original name, because the name, the word there is supposed to be Y and not J. So the Hebrew letter there is Y. There's no J in Hebrew, and there's no J in Hebrew because I've just also explained right now that the letter J was not even there at all until 1524. So the people that lived it before 1524, what name then did they use? Because there was no letter J. Hence, also saying you could still have access right now to the 1611 King James Version, and then you'll see there's no letter J there. There is no Jesus there. There is iosos, because this Italian author and grammarian Gian Giorgio Trissino only introduced this letter in 1524, and then it is now the version, the 4th edition of the King James Version, and other scriptures that actually came from around 1628 and up until now, that we're now starting to see the letter J, that we're now starting to see Jesus and so forth, but it was never there. Hence, it cannot be the name that the book of YaHUaH, otherwise known as Joel, commanded us to call upon. Joel or YaHUaH chapter 2 verse 35 to call upon, because it was not even there. It's relatively new, as I said, about 500 years ago. So this letter J was introduced around 500 years ago. So it could not be the name to call upon for deliverance. It cannot be the name that even the early Shalachim or disciples or emissaries were calling on Yahusha, because the letter J was not there. So that then clarified the error of how the name JeHoVaH came about. It came as a result of the mispronunciation and the mistranslation of the letter Y in YaHUaH, or in the 4-letter word Yod, Hey, Hey, that the Y on the Yod, that was translated as a J, and then people continue from generation to generation, that the practice or the habit of the name that came as a result of an error and the mistranslation that was never there before 1528. That was never there up until the 4th edition of the King James Version, which would have been around 1628, and other versions that came after the time, that were the name that was not there until 400-500 years ago. And then the other error that happened in the whole translation, I've explained how the J came about. The other error is then the letter V in the name JeHoVaH, because as I said, the 4-letter word Yod, Hey, Hey, the letter U, which is the U part, was also mistranslated as the letter V. Hence JeHoVaH instead of U in it. And when you look at the ancient origins of the letter V, it traces its lineage back to the Phoenician alphabet around 1000 BC with the letter YaHUaH, which is on in WaW. In other letters is pronounced as Vav. So they say Yod Hey, Vav Hey, Vav. That's where the or wow, the Phoenician alphabet, that the whole era also to call it a V instead of an U, or instead of a U. The symbol represented W with an U sound. And if you think about it, that W looks like two V's combined as like two V's, but also when you pronounce it, you say double U, as in two U's. That's how the era with the V also came about. As I said, it was a mistranslation that happened as they were doing the translation. As I said, in ancient origins, this letter V traces its lineage around this 1000 BC from the letter YaHUaH, or from the letter and then the Greek adaptation. So if we look at the from the Greek point of view, the Greeks borrowed this word or wow and modified it into epsilon, which is like your Y, that's epsilon, which represented both U and V. And then from the Roman adaptation, so you can see these words are evolving from the Phoenician alphabet to Greek to Roman or to Latin. The Romans took the epsilon and used the V shape for both the U and the V in their alphabet. Now, modern distinction, the separation of the V for consonant sound and U for the vowel sound occurred then around 16th century, partly due to printing press standardization of the alphabet. So you see how something started as originally with how it sounded, how it looked, and how it was written, but it then evolved with the adaptation from the Greeks, adaptation from the Romans, and even the modern days where we're at, they still continue with that. But his name, as I said earlier on, it does not evolve with time. It does not get adapted. It remains, and it's supposed to be remain as it is, as it provides meaning. That once you do all these changes and adaptation, it loses meaning and sense, and the same name that was and is and will be. So now, if we also look at the Jewish tradition, they then came on board and then introduced what is called the vowel markings. And they did that to remind themselves not to pronounce Yahuwah's name. And to them, they were saying that they are putting this vowel. Now, so you'll see what is called modern Hebrew. Modern Hebrew is really not Hebrew. It's just a combination of Yiddish and that has a German influence and so many adaptations in it, which is now called modern Hebrew. They, all the ones they're writing that have those nakud marks or vowel marks, they put those marks to remind themselves not to pronounce their name, because to them they felt that it should not be pronounced at all lest they break the third commandment. And everybody went with that narrative, which is also incorrect. It says in so many times that we must call upon his name, we must proclaim his name. So that's how then they inserted the vowels that we see now in the what so-called modern Hebrew, with those dots that are written in the modern Hebrew text, including the name of Yahuwah also having the dot, as you would see in some of the writings. This mispronunciation stuck as each new generation kept using this incorrect word. It is for this reason then that his name could not be Jehovah, as I've explained how the letter J came about, how the letter V came about, This is all recent, but his name has always been there. It came as a result of the people trying to translate his name, but they did it incorrectly, as I have explained. Another name that is commonly known is then Yahweh. It's also incorrect, but the part of Yah in the name is correct, because the Yah part is the I am, what is translated in English is I am. As I said again, it should not be translated, but the Yah part, because it's YaHUaH, is correct. What is not correct then is the letter W, which if you how it also came about, that the whole vav letter, which was used as a consonant, in this case W, when it should have been used as a vowel. So again, in Hebrew there is no letter W, and yet here we see Yahweh. So it's supposed to be U, not UU, not W, because the letter W also came as these languages were evolving and so forth. And his name does not evolve, his name does not change. So as we now have identified his true name, have identified that JeHoVaH is incorrect and the name Yahweh is incorrect, and how those errors came about, then knowing his correct name as YaHUaH, why should you call on his name? Having the true knowledge of YaHUaH is less about knowing his name, but more about understanding and experiencing the character of the individual behind the name. A lot of people call on the name of the correct pronunciation of YaHUaH and the correct pronunciation of his son's name being Yahusha. But unfortunately, it's very sad that their conduct, their lifestyle, their behavior is contrary to the name that they know, to the name that they're calling. And then you ask yourself, it was sad for me even to realize that it's well and good to know his name. It's just the start. But what does his name represent? Are you living according to his name? Are you reflecting his name in how you speak, in how you treat other brothers and sisters, in how you treat other people, in how you trust him, in how you worship him, in how you serve him? So it's more than just a name. It is about experiencing the character of the individual behind the name and reflecting and representing the character of the individual behind the name. And that's why Yahusha said, many will come and say, Master, Master, in your name, this is the real name of his name, Yahusha. We did this, we did that. And you'll say, get behind me, I never knew you. Go away, I never knew you. Why? Because you pronounced the right name, you called the right name, but it didn't change you. It didn't change you to live according to the understanding of a person, of the individual behind the name. You actually misrepresented his name and his character and who he is. So when it is all said and done, it is knowing his name and calling on his name. It's just a start. A lot of people, they know his name, but they're so full of pride, they're so full of arrogance, they're so full of prejudice. So that name is not doing them any good. You have to represent the name that you're calling upon, because you are representing the person, the character, the individual behind that name. And this name speaks of what pleases YaHUaH, what pleases him, what displeases him, what are his promises, what does he expect from us, what are his reward if we obey him, how does he chastise us, how does he protect us, how does he provide for us, how does he deliver us, how he creates, how he destroys, how he lifts up, how he pulls down, how he heals, how he afflicts, how he leads us to him. That is all in his name. Name speaking of not just the pronunciation, name speaking of reputation, speaking of character, speaking of essence. speaking of who the person is, what the person represents. There are some other reasons why we should call on his name. And I've just summarized these 5 examples of the importance. Now that we know his name, now that we understand his name, why then should we call on his name? We call on his name to keep his name in remembrance for generations to generation. Because if we don't call on his name, how would the generation after us know his name? We didn't know his name because it was removed in the scriptures that we have access to, or the Bible that we have access to. His name, like we spoke that last week, that it was removed and replaced with Lord and God. So people did not know his name because it was removed. Now, it wouldn't be in people's remembrance because they didn't know it. But the more we call on his name, then the more it's going to be in people's remembrance. And why is it that it must be in people's remembrance? Because he commanded as such. When he spoke to Masha, otherwise known as Moses, in Shamut or Exodus chapter 3 from verse 13 to 15, when he said that Masha, I must go to Yashar and say that the Allah of your fathers has sent me. They're going to ask me what is his name. And what must I say? What is his name? That's when then YaHuaH then reintroduced his name to Masha, who had to reintroduce it to Yasharal as YaHuaH. And he says in verse 15, this is my name forever. Forever. It does not change. It's the same name, YaHuaH, forever. And then he says, this is my remembrance to all generations. So all generations are to remember me by calling on my name, by mentioning my name. So if we don't mention his name, then how is his remembrance going to be known? So the reason why we have to call on his name, to keep the memory of his name, the remembrance of his name, to not only our generations, but the generations after us, for his name is to be called on for his remembrance for all generations. So that's the reason why we have to call on his name. Another reason for calling on his name is that deliverance is found in his name. And we read this in the book of Joel, otherwise known as Joel, chapter 2, verse 32, where it says, and it shall be that everyone who calls on the name of YaHuaH shall be delivered. And I've read this again, that where it has been removed, his name, it says, and anyone who calls on the name of Lord shall be delivered. And we spoke about this both in the first teaching of this series as well as the second, that it could not have said in the name of the Lord, because Lord is not a name. Lord is a title. Once I raised this to someone, I said, what were they supposed to call on then in the ancient times, as YaHuaH is saying that anyone who calls on this name will be delivered? Someone said that they must call on the name Jesus. Well, how would they have called on the name Jesus at that particular time? Because Yahusha, the son of the Creator, the son of the Most High, had not been revealed in person here on earth. So how were they supposed to be calling on the name? Because that name was not there to be calling on at that particular time. He was not there. And we have now just spoken earlier on that the name Jesus was only introduced in 1524. So before 1524, what were they calling on? Even the first edition of the King James Version did not have Jesus. It had Iosus. It was only later, around 1628, that the name Jesus was then introduced, after the Italian grammarian Giano came up with this name. So it could not be the name of Jesus. It could not be the name of JeHoVaH, as I just explained. The letter J was not there, and the letter V also came as a result of the whole evolution from adaptation from Phoenician alphabet, Greek alphabet, Roman alphabet, as well as now the modern one. That's why his name needs to be correctly pronounced for in his name only there is deliverance. We also read in the book of Acts the way it says that there is no other name given unto men by which they can believe, they can be delivered. No other name, only one name. And if you read the book of Psalms, chapter 91, a lot of people, they love the Psalms, chapter 91, that says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Verse 14 says, because he cleaves to me in love, therefore I deliver him. I set him on high because he has known my name. He sets you high because you have known his name, because you have cleaved to him in love. The condition of the application of Psalms 91 in your life is in knowing his name, not his title, but his name, and calling on this name. I used to make example when it says that whosoever calls on the name of YaHuaH shall be delivered. In America, they are told that if there is an emergency, they must dial 911. If someone there dials 777 or 555, there is no medical personnel or police personnel that's going to be dispatched for the safety, for the protection, from the deliverance of the person who is under attack, or whatever kind of attack or distress, who's under distress. It's only when they dial the number 911. In South Africa, it's the number 10-111. So if in any case of any emergency, you dial 10-111. But if somebody dialed 0101, doesn't matter how much you dial, no deliverance is going to be dispatched, no services is going to be dispatched, because you're dialing the wrong number. The same also happens if he has given us one name. It is only that one name that when we call on, that deliverance will come. And that's why we sound like a broken record, and people, until they hear and do, we will continue proclaiming this name and the importance of calling on his name, and correction on how the mispronunciation came about. YaHuaH told his disciples, as recorded in the book of Matthew, otherwise known as Matthew chapter 24, that this message of the kingdom shall be proclaimed in all the earth as a witness, and then the end will come. So we are doing just that. We are proclaiming his word, we are proclaiming his name, so as a witness, that nobody could say, I didn't know. This is why we're doing what we're doing. So this is another reason why we have to call on his name. It is for deliverance. We find safety in his name. In Proverbs chapter 18 verse 10, it reads, the name of YaHuaH is a strong tower. The obedient runs to it and are safe. So you find safety in the name of YaHuaH, which is a strong tower. It is the obedient one that run into it. So if you reject his name, you don't want to call on his name, you are disobedient, and as a result you will suffer consequences of rebelling against YaHuaH. He guards us, his name guards us, and we see this when YaHuaH was praying before his ascension, as found in the book of Yahukanon, otherwise known as John chapter 17 from verse 11 to 12. It reads, and now I am no more in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to you, Kadash, Abba, or Holy Father. Guard them by your name, the same name which you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. While I was with them in the world, I guarded them in your name. Those that you gave me I have kept, and none of them is lost except the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. So he guarded us. YaHuaH guarded us, guarded his followers, and those that accepted the name of the Father in his name, in the Father's name. That name of the Father provided safety, provided deliverance, provided guidance. It guarded them. The name of the Father, which the Father gave to the Son. The fifth example reason, as I said, this is not exhaustive. I'm just mentioning the 5 in the interest of time, is that we are to sing praises to his name. We are to barak or bless his name. If we read Psalms 68 verse 4, it says, sing to Allah, sing praises to his name, raise up a highway for him who rides through the desert. By his name YaHuaH, by his name Yah, exalt or kneel or bless him. Psalms 96 verse 2, it says, sing to YaHuaH, bless his name, proclaim daily his deliverance. We are to proclaim daily his deliverance, for deliverance is in his name. We are to barak his name. We are to praise his name. How are you going to barak or pray or bless his name if you don't know it? How are you going to exalt him if you do not know his name? Or how are you going to proclaim and praise his name if you do not know it? We are commanded to sing praises to his name, and that's why we have to know his name, and not just the name, but the understanding, the meaning behind what the name represents, what the name carries. The other part to look at even as we're about to wrap up today's teaching, is that his people are called by his name, and we can see this also the scripture, the version that we have now, like your Hallelujah scriptures, like your JeHoVaH scriptures, like even the TS 2009 scriptures, the BYNV versions, they have now written the original names of the people of Yah, which had been changed, because the Bible translators, they changed the names of Yah's people, like the name Jeremiah, Isaiah, or Isaiah, or Obadiah, or Zephaniah. When you pronounce it as Yah, Jeremiah, or Isaiah, or Obadiah. But how it was written, or it's actually currently written in the other versions, like your King James, NIV, the Bible that we have access to right now, it still has the changed what's the word? The wording, the spelling, yes, that's what I'm looking for. The spelling is incorrect, but the pronunciation is right. We say Isaiah, Jeremiah, Obadiah, Zephaniah, Amariah, but the spelling is incorrect. They changed the spelling to IAH instead of YAH, because it's Yah, but they changed it to IAH. And they continuing, just like they removed the name of YaHuaH in the scriptures, they removed the name Yah on Jeremiah, on Isaiah, on Obadiah, on Zephaniah, on Amariah, and so forth. You can see so many, Josiah, Hezekiah. They removed the name Yah and replaced it with IAH. And the intention around, or whether it was intended or not, you decide. From my point, I see that as an intention to continue the practice of hiding the name of, because they had removed the name. Because when you say, if it was written as Jeremiah with a Yah, then the name Yah is there. We can still be able to link the name to the people of Yah. So this was further promoting, perpetrating the rebellion of removing Yah's name, because his name is in his people's name. His people are called by his name. So if they too also put the IAH, then you don't see the YAH. Then you cannot connect YaHuaH or the people of Yah to his people, even as we read the scriptures. So this went ahead, basically leading people further astray from linking themselves to the name of Yah, even for us to have the link between Yah and his people. So it was a really, really well orchestrated conspiracy to say, not only are we going to remove Yah's name or Yahuwah's name, but anyone that is associated with this particular name, we're going to change it. Hence, these names are now changed with IAH instead of YAH at the end. We see the very practice not only in the scriptures, but also in the register of the transatlantic slave trade, that the names of our brothers and sisters who were taken in Africa to Americas, to Europe, to Arabian, it also happened through Arabic slave trade, that their names also were changed totally, so that they cannot link their names to their creator, to their father, to their Allah, who is Yahuwah. So anything that had a name Yah, they made sure that they changed. Everyone has access, most people, not everyone acknowledge that, but most people have access to internet. And then if you just click the register for Atlantic slave trade names, there's a lot that could see. I have a copy of it here that shows the names of some of the people that were taken in Africa through this register that they have. How old were they when they were taken, their height, their gender, origin, where they were taken, the ship name, in which ship they were put in, and what's the name of that ship, and when did they arrive in Americas, and who was their slave master. So if I look here as an example, the name 𝐤𝐄𝐄𝐤, this was a man who was 21 years of age, and he was taken to a ship called Anna Maria, and arrived in 1820 in America, and then arrived in 1820 in Bonny, and then disembarkation happened in Freetown around the same time. So this you can find this information, but the key issue is all these people, it's also show where they were taken. It shows where they were taken in Igbo, or exactly where they're taken, what Voyager ID was used. You can find this information, it's available on the internet. Now, question is, so many of these which are now called Black Americans, that were taken in Africa through the slave trade Atlantic process, women, girls, young men, boys, and so forth, their name, all of them had, I'm just reading a few here, it was 𝐤𝐄𝐄𝐤, 𝐿𝐿𝐿, YaHuah, HaNyah, HeNyah, BeNeHyah, HoNyah, and Danya, and so forth. All these names were changed because they contain the name Yah in it, or they contain the name YaHuah in it. Why would the slave masters be so eager to change the names of the slaves and to rename them if it didn't matter? So not only did it happen in what is so-called Bible, but the names of the prophets and so many names in the Bible, to see that they've been changed from Isaiah, with the now replaced with IAH instead of YAH. And so many Obadiah, and not only with the one with Yah, even the ones with Al, like YaHUaH, which is now called Joel. As I said, there was no letter J. So there's so many changes that have happened, and this teaching is intended to say, now you know the truth. Are you going to obey and walk according to it, or are you going to continue in ignorance? When Yah says that my people have perished for lack of knowledge. This was all done to conceal the heritage of the people, to lead Yasharal astray from their Allah, and never to say, or rather to connect their names to their Allah. And a lot of people, they refer to Allah and they think that when I'm saying Allah, I'm speaking there's some profane idol that is worshipped by Islam people. No, I am not. The name Allah is literally a Hebrew name that means Most High. It's pronounced, sorry, it's spelled as Alaf Lamad. Those are the two words, ALaPH, Lamad. And this is why, as we were instructed, that we need to go back to the ancient path. We need to go back to the ways of old and walk in it, and not be rebellion in saying that we will not walk in it, and not be like people that says that I'm so used to the old wine, I will not change, I'm still going to continue drinking the old wine because I know it, because it is nice. Rejecting the new wine. We have to let go of the old wine, because if you put a new wine in the old wine skin, they're going to burst, and it's the wine skin, the old wine skin is going to burst, and both the wine and the wine skin are going to be destroyed. We are to put the new wine in the new wine skin, put the new cloth into another, and not combine the new cloth with the old cloth, otherwise it will all tear. It is all about Romans 12 that says that we have to renew our minds. We have to accept that we have been lied to, we have been deceived, but the truth is coming out. And the question is, are you going to obey the truth? And what I'm just saying, obviously within this 1 hour or less than an hour presentation, you have access to go and search the scriptures for yourself, search the information that is available there on internet, pray about it, ask the Ruach of YaHUaH to bring clarity to you. He's faithful and he wants you to know the truth. So that's why I want to we're going to end today on the name of the Father, how it links to the name of his people. And then as we will be starting, the next teaching will be then on the name of his Son. Then we're gonna be looking at it with this understanding of his name. The Son's name is in the Father's name. So the name of the Father is found in the Son's name. Now that we have had enough foundation, spend about 3 weeks on just going through the name of the Father, so that when we come to the name of the Son, you can see the link. It will become easier, because the Father said, my name is in him, referring to the Son. Shalom, until we meet next time again.